So I've had a lot of people ask me how I went from a 9 to 5 to my own business. And Mitch Matthews is the coach that walked me through that process. Not only is he a coach, but he's also a speaker, a creator, and host of the Top 1% podcast called Dream Think Do. And he's here today to talk to us about the authority bridge, which is his process of how he helps high achieving leaders just like you and I to dream bigger, to think better, and to do more of what we were put on the planet to do, basically to start our own business. Let's get into today's conversation with Mitch because it's going to be a really good one. I'd love to start with a little bit of your story. Can you tell us what brought you from professional to business owner?
I got promoted into a bad fit job, and I knew it within a day. Hopefully nobody knows that experience, but I'm guessing everybody's probably had something similar. It was brutal at the time, but when I look back, I am wildly grateful for that. And so I think maybe for your listeners, if anybody is in one of those bad fit jobs, and I'd be the first one to say it wasn't a bad job. It was just a bad fit for me. And I know for me, the minute I stepped into it, I knew it was soul crushing. It didn't allow me to use my skills and gifts and the things that I had learned. And so immediately I felt ineffective, unqualified and unprofessional, inefficient, all those things. But that wound up being the wake up call that I needed to actually move into the next season of my life with boldness and intentionality.
What was that moment for you? Like that moment in time put us when you
Yeah.
decided I've got to
So
change something.
Yeah. So what's interesting about it? So I was in the pharmaceutical industry. So I sold drugs legally. And it's funny. Our oldest son was into kindergarten, and his teacher called us, and she said, "Hey, you need to talk to Ben about how he talks about what you do." And I said, "Well, why is that?" And she said, "Well, I asked everybody what their moms and dads did, and everybody talked about their dad's jobs and their mom's jobs. And they came around to you and Ben. And Ben said, 'My dad sells drugs out of the trunk of his car.'"
That's funny.
Right. So I was like, all right, I'm on it. I'll get it. But I was in the pharmaceutical industry, had success in the field, moved into corporate and training, and I loved it. It was a great fit. I flourished. But then I got promoted into a position that was a bad fit. And I joke about it now, but it's absolutely true. My wife and I were also living at the time a sitcom life, which she was staying home with our boys at the time. So we had single income, 2 children, oppressive mortgage. So I couldn't just quit that bad fit job. And I'd been promised some things, then they didn't come to fruition. Leadership change basically on the day where I was promoted. Kind of organizational goals shifted. It was a perfect storm, but also it almost immediately woke me up. And I knew that I was probably on the entrepreneurial journey. I'd gotten bitten early on in life at 13 and 14. I started to work at my little town in Iowa's bicycle shop, and I got very interested in being an entrepreneur, but knew that I probably needed to go learn in the corporate world for a while before I did my own thing. And that bad fit job helped me to remember that I'd always thought about, maybe even dreamed of being an entrepreneur. And so I started to think, okay, well, I can't just quit this job. I would have loved to just quit that job, but I'm glad I didn't because I still learned things. And I always say, hey, but even at a bad fit job, one of the ways to survive and navigate and even thrive is to look around and say, what can I be learning? What could I be earning? Who could I meet? And also what could it make me available to do? And that's what my scenario was, is I learned some things I needed to learn, but also with the schedule that I had, it allowed me some flexibility to start experimenting with something on the side. It's one of those, I didn't have to report to an office. So I still delivered. I hit all my numbers. I did everything I was called to do and then some, but I had more flexibility in my day. And so I started to learn, I started to consume and did a bunch of books on tapes. This was before Audible existed. So I got CDs from the local library. I basically gave myself an MBA in my car as I drove, but I also started to invest in training that allowed me to learn some things that I needed to learn to actually become a coach and a speaker. And I started to do that on the side. I had to give myself permission to start messy. I had to give myself permission to be new at something and be a novice. And, I'd had a relative success. I was kind of well known in my company. So to feel like I was a newbie at something felt new. And sometimes when things feel new, they feel wrong. But I had to continue to remind myself, hey, it's okay to be new at something if you're intentionally learning it. And so just started to experiment with building our business. And we did that over time. And it grew. And we made a bunch of mistakes, but it grew. And we were able to make it to the point where we could leave and I could launch our business full time and did that in 2002 and have never looked back, which I'm wildly blessed to say.
Okay, that's amazing. And I always think it's interesting to kind of look back. So often we're looking forward, and if
Right.
what we look at in in the forefront is unknown, we
Yep.
think we have nothing. But you're
Right.
mentioning when you were 13, you already were bitten by the entrepreneurial bug.
Yeah.
And then fast forward, you learned all these skills, and then you realize, okay, I'm going to venture into something new.
Yep.
And you said something along the lines of like it becomes hard to like learn to be new at something again when you've been
Yep.
so good at your job for so long.
Yep.
I would love to hear like did that entrepreneurial bug like you I feel like there's a point where you just feel like it's in me somewhere. I just got to
Yep.
dig it up. Like
Yep.
what was that like for you?
Well, it's interesting because, and I am now a success coach and have been for over 20 years. And one of the things I talk about is success is fantastic and it can be very dangerous because it's just what you said. Oftentimes, when we have success in one area, it seems then riskier to try something new because we've been seen as a success. We have, monicum of success. And now to go and look like you're new at something, a novice at something, that feels more risky. Like less like people who've never had any level of success and no one has any expectations of them. They might know every show on Netflix, but they haven't had a lot of success. All of that, that person doesn't care whether, it looks risky to try something new, but somebody that's very successful, that feels like risk. And so I had to continue to remind myself, hey, this is not risky. I'm just learning something new. I actually encourage myself and challenge myself to try something new intentionally each year, right? So that is a part of it. But what I would also say is when you're giving yourself permission to try something new, it is a really important thing to focus on as we grow because as we grow, we need to stretch. Sometimes stretching feels really uncomfortable, and that was what it was for me was when I started to venture out and started to explore adding coaching and speaking kind of to as a side business. I realized there was a bunch of stuff I didn't know what to do. And it was interesting. One of my mentors at the time, a very successful entrepreneur, he and I were sitting there, and I was kind of beating myself up for not knowing how to do a number of these things, especially entrepreneurially, especially with building the actual business. And he stopped me and he said, hey, I don't think you've ever had to have surgery. And I said, no. And he goes, well, let me ask you this, though. If you did have to have surgery, would you hope that your surgeon was naturally good at science in high school? And I thought about it. I was like, yeah. And he said, at the same time, would you also hope that your surgeon went and got a bunch of specialized training before they cut you open? I'm like, yeah. And he goes, so why are you beating yourself up for needing to go and get some additional training? And I'm like, well, that's a good thought. Because I think a lot of people, especially when it comes to starting a business, doing something entrepreneurially, I think a lot of people, I know outside looking in, thought, oh, all the entrepreneurs that I see, all the successful entrepreneurs, they're just naturally good at it. They just naturally know how to do stuff. And I don't know how to do that stuff, so I must not be meant to be an entrepreneur. And it's like, nah, it's not that. It's just the really good ones have, some of the stuff comes naturally, but a lot of it they've gotten some training. And that's a huge part of it.
Oh my gosh, I can't tell you how spot on that is. I thought for the longest time when I first was trying to make the shift, it's a big shift, and I
It
thought for the
is.
longest time, I have to know it, everything has to come from me, and it was just such I always tell folks, like, wouldn't it be awesome if you got paid more but worked less, right? I was doing the opposite. Like, I
Yeah.
was getting paid nothing and I was working incredibly hard, and I thought that's how it had to be. And
Yep.
your program was actually one of the first programs, actually was the first program that I went through to
That's
get
amazing.
training and to
Yep.
feel like, oh, I have a foundation I can now pull on. And that foundation, the beautiful thing is, it wasn't just, let me tell you the things you need to know. You like help me to see not only like the new things, but also how I can pull on my toolbox to
Yeah.
leverage that into the future. So it was very much a bridge. So
Mm,
I'm curious to hear now from you, like, how did you find that thread? You've been doing this for a long time. And I know
yeah.
by the time you helped me, it was like easy for you. You could tell it
Ah.
was so smooth, you know?
Yeah.
So, like, how did you find that thread to help people pull from their past and then move into something new?
Yeah. Well, first, I always say if you're going to teach something, you better have done it. And so that was definitely the approach that I took, and everything that we teach. And I'm wildly blessed to say, you know, we went full time on coaching and speaking in 2002. And then in 2006, other coaches, speakers started to notice like what we were doing was working. So they're like, teach us what you're doing. Just tell us what you're doing. And we did these like boutique trainings that would help people. And then in 2011, we took that online and then have continued to develop it so that, you could be a part of the program you were a part of, which I just think about that time and oh my gosh, I just love your story. Um, but yeah, it's one of those things where part of it is it's obvious. Sometimes when you look back, it's obvious, right? And
Mm.
and we hear that when we look at anybody else's journey, it always looks like a straight line, but when we look at ours, it's squiggly and all that stuff. But trust me, this. Everybody's line squiggly, right? Like everybody's
Incredibly.
line is squiggly. So I always say when it comes to coaching and speaking and building that kind of business, there are things that are going to be unique to the person, but there's also certain things that actually, as a pattern, we've seen it work so often that we actually now call it the six-figure sequence. There is a sequence that universally tends to work for people. And it works so well. It's funny. I was in the pharmaceutical industry, and one of the drugs that I sold was so effective, doctors could actually use it as a diagnostic tool. So they could actually, if a patient came in with a set of symptoms, they could give them this drug, and if they responded, they knew the diagnosis because that drug was so effective. And the six-figure sequence for a lot of people does the same thing of being able to say, for somebody that's just getting started, they can go, oh, there's my checklist. And for people that have been trying to do it for a while, they can go, oh, wow, I have totally missed that step and that step. That's why it's not working. So
Mm.
I love it, but it's built on kind of my experience, but then also the experience, getting to help now thousands of coaches and speakers to do it, which I love. So I always say you got to be a scientist wherever you are. We have a coaching model that's called the scientific method coaching model, based on the scientific method. And I say it's a great model for coaching and for life, because if you're a scientist, if you want to decide to prove or disprove something, you make a hypothesis, which, Webster's dictionary describes or defines hypothesis as a best guess, a well educated guess, which is, I think, probably the best definition for plan. Like if
Mm.
we make a plan, it's a best guess, right? But then a scientist knows that they're not done with the hypothesis. They have to go experiment. They have to try it and see if it works and see if it goes the way they thought. And if it doesn't go the way they thought, that's not failure. That's learning. And then you
Mm.
evaluate and adjust and you start over and keep going. And I say that's a great coaching model, but it's also a great way to live life. And it's the only way to build a business. So you say, okay, this is what I think I want to do. This is the
Mm.
plan that I think I need to take, at least in this time frame. Start experimenting, see if it works, and then learn and rinse and repeat.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because almost everyone I talk to who has been like, oh, how's it going in your business? Or I want to do something like that. It's
Yeah.
always like, how did you avoid failure? And I'm like, no, no, no. You dive into it. It's what you do. Like, you
Exactly
plan,
right.
you take an educated guess, and then the only way to find out is to do it. Right.
Yep. And,
One
and I
question.
love that because you bring that up. That is a redefinition of failure. Like a redefinition of failure is quitting, right?
Mm,
Failure is not having something go the way you didn't think it went, right? That's learning. And to be
yeah.
able to say, okay, I thought it was going to go this way, it didn't go that way. What do I want to learn? What do I want to evaluate and adjust? Now, I will also say sometimes when it doesn't go the way you thought, it hurts, right? So I
Oh, it
will say,
always hurts a
feel
little.
feel the feels, right? Like I'm not one of those where it's like, oh, Buttercup, you're just fine. Like no, it hurts sometimes. But when we learn, I can tell you, and I know you've experienced this too, some of my absolute biggest breakthroughs in my life and in my business came on the backside or
Yeah.
because of something would have been easy to label as failure. It was just
Okay.
waiting on the other side of something going very wrong or very different than I thought it was going to go. And that's what oftentimes has set me up for some of the biggest successes.
I always tell my husband, I'm like, every breakthrough I've had, it's been on my head. Like I literally have banged my head on the wall so much, I finally break through. Like, and there's tears in the
Exactly.
middle of that. There's I
Yep.
want to give up in the middle of that. So here's the thing. I know some people just jump off the ledge,
Yeah.
right? But a lot of the people that I talk to are kind of like they had that 13-year-old itch,
Yep.
entrepreneurial itch that you're talking about.
Yep.
And
Yep.
they're like, yes, but like you said, I've got the mortgage, I've got
Yep.
the kids and this and that.
Yep.
Um, instead of jumping on the ledge, how do we slowly start rolling down that hill
Yep.
and slowly kind of, building something so that in the future we can offload the
Yep.
W-2?
Yep, I love it. So, and that's such a great question. I know it's the way that you did it, right? There's a lot of people that say, I have to take a big blind leap of faith to make this work. And I am a big believer. It's not one giant blind leap of faith, it's small steps of faith over time. So much so that we actually now, our biggest movement and most popular program is something we call the Authority Bridge, which is it's a step-by-step process that allows successful people in careers, whether they love their career or maybe they're a little tired of their career, but they either don't want to or can't leave it immediately. I say we celebrate that and say, just step onto the authority bridge. So the authority bridge is a three-phase process. And just hearing it might actually help your people, whether they work with us or not on it. But the three phases of the authority bridge, and that is to step out, and it actually works for a number of businesses, but especially for coaching and speaking or consulting. Phase one is what we called covered authority. And that is where you stay in your job, you stay in that career, you continue to deliver excellence, you continue to learn and grow. But covered authority means you start to put out content in a consistent way that you are excited about. It's things that you are learning. We always say teach from the journey, not the destination. When you do that, you never run out of content. But what you do is you start to put out content, and you don't have to be like we say, don't go full Kardashian. Don't like you don't have to be on Instagram and the Facebooks 24/7. We actually really recommend something we call a lighthouse post, which is one post a week, something from the heart, something you're learning from your journey. You don't have to make a big announcement. In fact, don't make a big announcement. You don't have to say, hey guys, I'm going to be a coach and a speaker and consultant now. It's like, nope, you're just teaching from the journey. That's called covered authorities. And that is where you can also very effectively start to build the foundation for your business. And then you can move into phase two, which is called emerging authority. And that's when you can more officially announce that you are offering coaching and speaking. You're not leaving your day job. You're not blowing up your life. All of
Hmm.
those things, you're just adding that in conjunction. And we kind of guide you on even how you can talk to the powers that be within your organization on how do you do that? How do you do that effectively? And what's amazing is 9 times out of 10, people, as they start to add coaching and speaking and consulting, oftentimes their organizations really value that because sometimes it can actually, as long as it's clear, it really adds value. It also adds something to talk about. It also adds to your credibility. It also often, for a lot of people, adds fire. Like they get excited again. They come in fully engaged. And they're having more impact and oftentimes making a lot more income. and they're doing it on the side. So that's emerging authority. And then phase 3 of what we call independent authority. That's when that day job goes away, the W-2 goes away, but now they are operating as their own business that's successful and oftentimes can surpass what they were making before. But it's not a blind leap of faith. It's consistent small steps of faith over time that make all the difference.
You're describing like exactly my story. You know what I mean? Like I just love
Exactly.
how that's moving forward. And if you're listening right now, I know that you're like, okay, so we talked about the 13-year-old entrepreneurial itch. And I know so many people that have like thought about it and wanted to, and it just felt scary, right? We've
Yep.
talked about the moment in your career or in your life when you realized, okay, it's time to put something in place so that
Yep.
I can start growing into that. We also talked about needing the training. And so this is where I just really encourage you. So when let me back up a little bit. When I first started, I actually found Mitch through, I don't even remember if it was a podcast or
Yeah.
I think it may have been Facebook or something. It was in the
Yeah, I
middle
don't
of
know
the
what the node
pandemic.
of connection was. I can't remember if somebody connected us or whether you came through the podcast or whatever. Yeah,
I think it
grateful
was
for it.
Facebook because
Yeah,
it
probably.
was middle of the pandemic. And I was
Yep.
like, I feel like now is the time, right?
Yep.
And so
Yep.
for you listening, maybe right now is the time. And at the moment, I remember, Mitch, you had like a boot camp of some sort, like an
Yep.
introductory, right? And, I shelled out the bucks. You either pay in money or you pay in time. And I was like,
Yep.
okay, we're going to figure this out. Let me
Yep.
just dip my toe in. And I got so like, it awakened something where I was like,
Yep.
yes, this is
Yep.
what I've been like in the back of my head. I've been thinking about, I've been dreaming about, but I just never had the courage to do it. And you're so encouraging that I left and
Thank
I'm
you.
like, we're doing this. So
I remember that.
all that to say, my friend, if you're listening right now, he has at mitchmatthews.com/time, he has a workshop that's making time for your next chapter, specifically for those high achieving professionals just like yourself, who has done all the things, you have all the skills, and now you're ready to start building what comes next. And normally this is $97. But Mitch is so gracious, so generous, and we have this relationship now that he has provided a code. And if you use the code uncommon at mitchmatthews.com/time, that introduction to the world of Mitch Matthews, an introduction to your next chapter is free. And it probably won't last forever. So jump on that if you're interested. Do you want to share more on that? Because I got really excited. I kind of
I
gave your
love it.
spiel.
I'm like, yeah, preach it, preach it. Yeah, it's just one of those things that what we've realized, and I know your audience, it's packed with highly successful, high achievers that are probably feeling that longing deep down to do something new, to have more impact, to try something new, maybe generate more income or revenue. And for high achievers, highly successful people, they want to know how to do it. But often one of the first questions is like, I want to know how to do it, but how do I even make time to do it? And with that, making time for your next chapter, it's specifically some strategies for how to make time. And then we also give you some entrepreneurial strategies as well. It's been a game changer for people. They're actually kind of blown away by how much content we get them in that it's actually in a short amount of time. It's about an hour training, but it's something that can really apply to anything you're wanting to do. If you know that you're called to something bigger, something new, something more in this next chapter, but you've been trying to figure out what that is and how to make some time for it. Because I know your folks are high achievers, they're highly successful. They're not sitting around watching Netflix, every night eating bonbons. They're busy. They got full schedules. So like this gives them a tactical way to not only do it, but to be inspired to do it, to then say, okay, this is
Mhm.
what I'm going to do.
Yeah. The coaching, the motivation, like the mindset, I diminished. Like I thought I have to do the things,
Right.
but without the mindset that things don't get done. And so that's what I think is so, so, so valuable about the work that you do. Okay, so as we start to wrap up here, imagine that everybody who is a high achieving professional, everyone's here with us right now.
Yeah.
And what you say next is going to make or break like their decision, right? They're sitting here and they're like, do I do this?
Yeah.
Should I start? What's your encouragement for them?
I love it. My encouragement would be to say, what if you start? What if you start? And I think a lot of people think if I start, it might blow everything up. Or if I start, I need to know all the steps. And I'd say, what if you start and it doesn't blow everything up? What if you start and it actually lights you up? What if it
Mm,
excites you? Right? What if you don't have to know all the next steps? You just have to take that next one. I always
mm,
say, what if? And also, what will your future self say thank you for? Will your future self say thank you for keeping everything the same?
mm.
Or will your future self say thank you for taking that step?
I
So I
love
say,
that.
what if?
What if? What if? That's a great question to ask yourself. Mitch, I know that we've got mitchmatthews.com/time,
Yeah.
but where else can we find you? I know you've got the awesome podcast. Tell
Yeah.
us all the
Yeah.
things.
So I definitely love hanging out. So you can go to mitchmatthews.com. There's a lot of free resources there, but that's also where you can find our podcast, which is called Dream Think Do, which you can grab at any of the platforms, wherever you're listening to podcasts. We help people to dream bigger, think better, and do more of what they are put on the planet to do. And get to interview lots of different folks, Oscar winners and best-selling authors and Olympians and extreme athletes, celebrities, but also people you've never heard of but will blow your doors off. I love doing it, and yeah, it's a true adventure to get to learn from people who are doing this kind of thing. So it's awesome. I love that we both have podcasts and they're hanging out together wherever people are listening to podcasts and consuming podcasts. And it's such an honor to be on yours finally. I know it's been so exciting to see this podcast grow, and it's such an honor and so much fun to actually be on this with you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it was just such an exciting moment to, be able to have this conversation with you and kind of share what I've gotten so many questions on myself to now be able to share it from the source, from the Mitch Matthews. So I so appreciate you coming
Oh,
on.
thank you.
And if you're listening, you're here with your cup of coffee, your coffee's almost gone. Just know that Mitch is here for you at mitchmatthews.com. And as always, know that we love you. We're praying for you, and we'll see you on the next one.